The days of acquiring anything or whatever or something that does not belong to you in Africa are over, because for time things like this have been happening many times, and we have been seeing it and keeping quiet because we couldn't do anything that time, because maybe we were not actually we had not gotten that understanding or that knowledge. But a time has come when the issues of taking things that does not belong to you, keeping it for yourself or taking it by force, snatching from the owners and not giving it back to them whenever they complain, you even threaten them and try to do something to them that is not good. Those days are over. Okay, so Western countries have been taking land in Africa for quite some time, for a very long time, and you'd find out when you do your research, you'll realize that in Africa, it is the only place where Western countries and Europeans, they have acquired a lot of lands. You'd realize that the biggest and the highest rate of land and the highest part of land, the biggest sizes of land in Africa is acquired by the Western people, by the imperialists, by the oppressors. Okay, I call them oppressors because they really did a lot of things to us. And you will realize that a lot of land, okay, big part of the land is acquired by them. But now we have gotten to a point when we have decided to do the land reforms. We don't want to continue living like that, because we said when we are taking over, we are actually taking over everything. Okay, so in Burkina Faso, there have been Ibrahim Traore is doing something very good, something very nice. All the land in the country belongs to the state. Okay, the issues of people having private lands, acquiring them, and maybe they acquired those lands in an illegal way, they're keeping it for themselves, and people who are supposed to have the original ownership of that land, they're just somewhere there, not knowing, they don't even know what to do, because the previous government maybe took land from them and it gave them to the Western powers. Because these people, these leaders we are calling them imperialists, we are calling them puppets, are the leaders who are taking advantage of us. Okay, they're the ones who are actually giving these people, like they're giving them authorities, and they're issuing authorities to them to be able to take these lands, and there is nothing that people can do. So these lands that had been taken away by these people are now coming back to the government. We don't know who is being used. Even someone can be used to take land. You are having a land, you are somewhere, you belong to Kenya, you belong to Bukina Faso, you belong to any country in Africa. You are a citizen of that country, but you are sitting on a land that does not belong to you. Okay, that land belongs to someone else, but he has put you there, he has placed you there as the owner of that land, so that when we are coming to look for land where white settlers are, we don't find white settlers in that land. We find someone who is black in that land. But in real sense, you are being used. You are a puppet being used to sit and be on a land that does not belong to you. We are putting an end to that. That is why the land reforms are being done in South Africa. The land reforms are being done in Burkina Faso. Every land that is taken, the difference between what is happening in South Africa? In South Africa, what is happening in South Africa? They are taking those lands directly. There's no negotiation. It happened this way. No, they're just coming there and taking that land back to the government by force, not asking many questions. And that is why Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa, they couldn't agree on that, because Cyril decided to take land back to the government because those lands were acquired during the laws of the imperialists during colonization, and therefore this land needs to go back to the people of South Africa and the government of South Africa. But now in Burkina Faso, every person who is owning land, every person who is owning land as a private property, those lands are taken back to the government, unless you have a legality, or rather you can be able to provide a way on how you acquired that land. Those lands comes back where? Comes back to the government, to the state. So land in Burkina Faso is a state property. Anybody who will have a land will have to go through the government and follow the steps and ways on how to acquire the land legally, and then he can be able to be issued a land. That is what is happening in Burkina Faso. This one will help so much, because now Western people, or other white people, cannot come to Africa again and take land however they like, take land in whatever way, because they've been taking land anyhow. Okay. They can no longer take lands anyhow and acquire lands anyhow to themselves. Okay, it is helping a lot. We don't want to continue living in a place where we have our properties belongs to us, but at the end of the day we cannot be able to have peace in that property. We cannot be able to enjoy our properties, because the properties, the only little thing we can have, the only little thing we call ours. They are the only things that these people, again, they are coming into those things and trying to make those things themselves, like to make it theirs, to make those things theirs. And at the end of the day, we are the people who remain in that places crying and complaining and all those things. Are you getting my point? Now, whatever is happening in Bukina Faso is one of the best things that have ever happened in Africa. And I pray and I'm happy, because even in South Africa, the same thing is happening. In Bukina Faso, the same thing is happening. In Zimbabwe, again, the same thing is happening. If you want to know the problems and the difficulties that a country and a state can go through when land is taken out of, when maybe the white settlers or maybe foreigners are coming to acquire land in your state, look at Zimbabwe. Look at what happened in Zimbabwe. All the fertile lands, 80% of the fertile lands were taken and given to the white people. Okay, it was given to the foreigners so they can be able to use it. They settled in the 80% of the fertile land, and then the 70%, and the 30% that remained was issued on many people who cannot even fit in the 30% size of the land, and that land was also infertile. Okay, so they squeezed themselves there, and it really affected the Zimbabweans a lot. Okay, people who benefited were the people in the state, in the government, but others could not benefit. Okay, and then Mugabe started fighting about this thing. He fought so hard. And at the end of the day, they called him a terrorist. They called him all sorts of names, because it is the nature of these people. Whenever we want to fight for our rights, they call us terrorists. Whenever we want to fight for our rights, they call us uncivilized. Okay, we can no longer fight for our rights. Why? Because they want to continue taking advantage of us. They want to continue oppressing us. They want to continue they want to continue eating from our backs and walking on top of us. That is what they want to do all the times. And I want us to get to a point when we can no longer allow things like this to happen, because the moment we allow things like this to happen, that is where now we begin crying, we begin finding it difficult to even grow ourselves and to grow our states and to grow our nations, because today we are being called poor, and this poverty that we are being imposed on is the poverty that was brought by the white man. But the same white man is the man who is calling you poor. The white man has forgotten he is sitting on your land. Okay, the white man has forgotten that the land that he has used to make himself rich is the land that you are supposed to use to make yourself rich. Now we are getting to a point when we are putting a no, and we are putting an end to this, and that is why Burkina Faso has done this. That is why South Africa has done this. That is why Zimbabwe is beginning to do this. We know that when we do things, they will always talk about us. They will always say we are bad people. They will always try to send threats. Like, for example, in South Africa, Cyril, when he started doing land, what is it called? When he began doing that, taking that land from the white people, taking it back to the state, to the government, what did USA did? Donald Trump decided to cut aid for 90 days. That is 3 months. That was a huge amount of money, because Donald Trump thought that he was helping South Africa a lot. And therefore, if South Africa could start doing that and we are helping them, then we should stop helping them. Because at the end of the day, the people who were really suffering in South Africa during that land taking to the government, that taking back land to the government, the people who are suffering were the white people, because white people are owning big lands in South Africa, because they're using that the law that was placed during colonization, that a black man is not supposed to own a land. So they owned lands, and that land that they owned, they are owning even today. It is still in their hands even today. And when you go to them, what do they say? They say, this land, we've had this land from a long time ago. It is something that it belongs to us because we acquired it a long time ago. But they are forgetting whatever they acquired, it belonged to us Africans. They acquired something that belongs to Africans. Okay, you acquired. It is not something that you made it yourself. No, you acquired. You did not buy it from the owner. You acquired from the owner. Okay, these owners right now can no longer be traced because it was during the time when our ancestors were alive. They died a long time ago. Another generation came, another one came. So the more the generations began coming after the other, we found them in that land. Now, we cannot really know the real owner of that land. What does the government do? The government takes that land back to the state, because you cannot continue sitting on something that you acquired it illegally. You need to be on something that belongs to you. You took it in the right way. You followed the right ways of taking it, and therefore we can now allow you, or we can listen to you when you're telling us that land belongs to you. You need to provide certificates, to provide papers, to provide documents that are showing that this land really belongs to you. But if you acquired it, you took it from someone else by force, that one does not belong to you. The person from which you took that land is no longer existing. Okay, now your children are the one living there, but they are told, they know the story, they know the history. Okay, they know that they do not belong to Africa. That means the land to which they are settling does not belong to them. It belongs to Africans. And therefore, what does South Africa does? South Africa decides to take that land back to the government, because that land belongs to the government. Okay? So, when Cyril decided to do that, when he started doing that, now threats began coming in. Donald Trump began sending threats because he knew that white people are the one who are suffering, okay, in South Africa. So he began sending threats and trying to say, oh, I'm going to cut aid, I'm not going to give funds that I've been giving to you for a total of 19 days. But Ramaphosa said, it is okay if you're not going to do that, but this is our state, and this is what we will continue doing. Are you getting that? So we need to stand by our we need to have a stand. We need to have principles on how we are going to do things, because we cannot continue being threatened. We cannot continue living under people who are threatening us every day and every time. What are we supposed to do? What we're supposed to do is to continue saying no day by day and every time, and at the end of the day we will have peace within ourselves. That is what we are looking for. So Burkina Faso, South Africa and Zimbabwe, what you're doing is very good. Let's take these things back to ourselves. Let's bring it back to ourselves, because they belong to us. Anybody who is in Africa, any person from the West who is in Africa illegally must be addressed. He must be told you're in Africa illegally, and what you're supposed to do, you're not supposed to be in Africa. You need to go back to your country and follow the right ways of coming and acquiring property in Africa. Because when we find ourselves in the United States of America, we are being asked and deported back to our countries because we are there illegally. So if someone can deport me back to my country because I am in his country illegally, why can't I also be able to deport their people from my country to their countries because they are in my country illegally? When I try to do that, I look like a bad person. I'll start being called a criminal. I will be called an uncivilized person. I'll be called all sorts of names. But when they do that, it's right. So when an African person, when a black person does something that is right, it is wrong. But when a white person does something that is wrong, it is right, even if it's not right. Which kind of a life is that? We cannot continue living like that. What we are saying is no to that. We are doing the reforms. We are fixing the mess, we are fixing the problems, and we do not have a backward foot. Forward we go, no backwards. We are going forward forever and forever. That is what we have decided we are going to do. And nobody is going to stop us. Nobody is going to send threat to us. Nobody is going to make us fear. Okay? Whatever Traore is doing in Burkina Faso, I congratulate it, because it started with Ibrahim Traore. When it was working, South Africa decided to do the same thing. That is what we're supposed to do as Africans. And I urge African nations, all African nations, let the lands in Africa belongs to Africans, because I don't believe there is any black person in the United States of America, in France, in Germany, in Britain, in the UK who owns a land. You're not allowed to own a land. It is very difficult for you to own a land in the US and you are a black person. But why is it that a white person can be able to own a land in Africa? What is the difference between a black person and a white person? What is the difference? In fact, we are the people who are supposed to be respected so much because we are contributing a lot in the growth of this world. Okay, although sometimes we're not contributing willingly, we are being forced to contribute. Sometimes they are stealing from us. Okay, so what are we supposed to do? What we're supposed to do is to live our lives. You live your life, let me live my life in my country. We be people who are depending on ourselves. Be independent, let me be independent. You're pretending to be independent while you're using my property and my resources to build yourself. Okay, that is something that we are not going to allow. Okay, you are telling me I am dependent. I'm depending to you so much. Okay, when you know very well you're making me depend on you. You're taking what belongs to me so that I can come for it, and then you say I'm depending on you. Now from today, the land that is in Africa should remain for Africans. The land that is in the United States, no African should have. In fact, no African have land in the United States. No African has land in Germany. No African has land in Belgium. Talk about France, no African. Talk about Britain, no African. Okay? Talk about the United Kingdom, no African. But why should a white person, why should a white man have a land in Africa? That now should be a stop, unless you're following the illegal way of acquiring property in in Africa. And if that could happen, also you need to put you need to put measures on how an African person can follow illegal way to come and own a property in the US or in Britain or in Belgium or in France or in the UK, all those countries. You need to put measures, because if at all you have to possess or to own a property in Africa, even Africans have the right to possess and to acquire a property in the United States of America or in the Western countries. That is what we are saying, and that is what I'm saying, and that is what is supposed to be. Nobody here is limited. Nobody here is disabled. Don't stop looking at Africans as disabled people. We're not disabled people. Okay, we are not disabled. My people, thank you so much for tuning in. Adios, muchachos.